Hi everyone, this is Anna Finch from Finch Press. Hope everyone's had a good day and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a little bit different. I am going to be explaining my writing process, specifically the planning stage for a novel. I'm going to be mainly using Voiceless as an example. I have planned other stories in other novels and I've got plenty of ideas that I would like to work on. But my main focus has been Voiceless at this stage. So I'm going to use that as my example and as I go through my writing process. Now, this is what worked for me with Voiceless. Now, I do try different strategies for different stories. I do different amounts of planning for each one so I know what works for me, what doesn't. So my planning strategies do change because I am willing to try new things. But this is mainly for what I use for Voiceless, okay? And this is only the planning stage. I'll go over editing in another video. So, in this video, I'll actually be explaining the 3-arc story structure. I'll be explaining hero's journey, character charts, and things like that I used for actually writing and planning my story. Okay, do stick around for a special announcement at the end of the video. Okay, so first things first. What I did was I started with an initial premise. Now, I got my idea as I was watching a couple of videos on YouTube, specifically about retellings, and I was bored at the time, and I just picked Little Mermaid because that was my favorite story growing up. Mainly the Disney version, but it was my favorite story. Now, first thing I did, I printed out the story and I analyzed it. So I got I printed it out and I read through it like twice, actually 3 times, and I actually highlighted key sections about character, about plot, about theme, and I annotated it. I made little comments around the whole page about the characters and notes about the theme, what I didn't like, what I did like, what I would like to keep, things like that. So I analysed it. Now, the reason for doing that is I hadn't read The Little Mermaid in quite some time. I had watched the Disney movie recently, so I wanted to make sure I stayed away from the general Disney story for copyright reasons, and I wanted to look at the original because the original was quite unique and it was a bit more mature than the actual Disney film in the way it told its story. So I found that it helped. Now, even if you're not doing a retelling, if you have an idea of what type of story you would like to write, so if you know you would like to write a romance but you haven't written a romance before, have a read through, read a couple of short stories, read a novel that is in that genre and have a look at how they write it. Look at the style, look at what you like in that story, what you don't like, tropes and character descriptions and things like that. Actually look at the story that's in your genre, even if you're not doing a retelling. Look at it, see what you actually like, and by doing that, at least you'll know what you don't like, and you'll know not to include it in your story, even though other people might be saying, oh, you should do this because it's in if you're writing a romance, they may say, oh, you should do this or put this trope in or put this thing in because that's what romances have. If you don't like it, well, you're not, if you do that analysis or reading beforehand, well, you don't like it, you're not going to put it in there. Okay, so analysing your story or reading books in that genre if you're not doing a retelling. Okay, next thing I did was basically a brainstorm or a brain dump. I literally got a piece of paper and I wrote in the middle plot ideas or brainstorm, and I wrote whatever came to mind. Now, this is again based on the Little Mermaid story that I read. So I already had ideas fresh from after analysing it, and I just wrote basic ideas. Okay, what do I want to happen in the beginning? Okay, what do you want to happen at the end? Okay, so I actually went over that in quite a bit of detail, and I did like 2 pages full of plot points and ideas. Now, some of them are kept, some of them I didn't. And that's okay. It's basically just a brain dump. You put whatever ideas come to mind about the story, the plot, and if you are a pantser, you can disregard it. So pantsers may do something like this and may write a whole bunch of points and ideas about it, and then they're like, okay, throw it in the bin, and they start writing. It's basically just to get your ideas out. And when it's written on paper, it's kind of easier to see what works and what doesn't, because you can look back on it the next day, a couple of days later, week later, however long you want to do rest between the different stages. And you can go, okay, well, I know I like this, but how would this thing work? And it will actually give you a better idea of what actually works in your story. And I'll show you what I did. So I actually did. I actually did 2 pages worth of the notes, and I did full paragraph chunks of notes about, okay, this is what the city is like. I actually went over the backstory for the place, the setting. Okay, this is what the city is like. This is what happens to it. This is why it is what it is. And I went over, okay, let's go to the actual main story. Start writing, okay, my character, this is what they want, this is what their life is like. And I go over until I get to the end, what I want to happen at the end. Now, my plot did change from this. So the actual plot that I did in the 3-act story structure, where I actually planned it, I actually changed quite a bit of what I had in my brain dump or plot ideas. Some I took out, and particularly something that I changed was about the main character's family. And I thought, no, I like, a lot of the time the parent is the villain, and I'm like, no, she should have her parent should be good. Who would be the bad guy? But someone new. And I did change it. So brain dump is just to get your ideas out, and you may disregard it later. Okay, next thing I did was basically plotting using the 3-act story structure. Now, the 3-act story structure is basically this. You have beginning, middle, and end. Your beginning, or the first section, or the first act, is your setup. Okay? It is what happens before their life changes, what do they want, why are they doing this. Your inciting incident would happen in that first act, and you would look at just the build up. Okay, what is it they want? Who are they? What's happening in their story? Second act, or the middle chunk, is where the bulk of the conflict or obstacles are. There needs to be obstacle after obstacle in the 3-act story structure. Your main character can't just coast through everything. They need to change and grow over time. So that is super important. So you need to actually know how they grow, how they change. Now let's see if I can get this up. Let's see if I can do it. Okay. Now, this is not for voiceless. I did basically basic plot. So I basically went, okay, what happens beginning? What it is that's driving the story? What do they want? And then, bam, conflict or inciting incident. Okay, second act is the writing action confrontation. Obstacles. Okay, what are the obstacles in their way? What is the twist in the middle? What is pushing them as they go further and further down the rabbit hole or further in the story? Okay, Act 3 is falling action. Oh, then you have climax in the 3rd act. So falling action resolution. Okay, have they met their challenge? Have they met their goal? What happens at the end? You wrap up the story. Okay, Now, the way I did that initially was using a template that I actually got from my school resources where I was teaching. And you can get this sort of thing online. So I basically drew had a diagram like this, where I had orientation, conflict, inciting incident. The conflict is the inciting incident. Rising action, dot point. Okay, what is it that pushes the story forward? Climax, what is the highest point of tension in the story? Okay, falling action, and then resolution, what happens at the end. And it's very, very basic. I don't go into too much detail. And and this is something you can do. And even if you do something like this, doesn't mean you have to follow it when you're actually writing your story. That can change. As you're writing, you find, okay, that's not working, or this won't work based on how you've written your characters. You might go, okay, no, this thing that I was going to put originally, that won't work because of the way the character actually is, what I discovered when I was writing this character. And it can change. And that's the good thing about doing a basic plot. You don't have to stick with it. Okay? You can throw it in the bin, or you could ignore things that you think might not work. And that's okay. So, that's basic 3-act. Now, you can there's quite a few resources about the 3-act story structure, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Abby Emmons has a fantastic video about using the 3-act story structure. I've linked it down below. She also has a couple of resources for actually plotting out your story using the 3-act story structure, which I found really good, and I used that to plot or plan the story that I was actually that I'm planning on co-writing with my brother, and I actually used that resource for that, and that's the only planning I did for that story. So there's quite a few resources, and I'll put a basic template for the 3-act story structure that I'm using currently for my new novel. Okay, so next thing. Now, after I did that, I wanted to know about the character. So, what I did was the hero's journey. Now, I already had planned and plotted out my setting, the basic plot, what happens. So, with the hero's journey, this is what's interesting. Hero's journey kind of follows a similar pattern to the 3-act story structure, only they use different terms and stages. Generally, with the hero's journey, it is basically focusing on your main character and the changes that they go through throughout the story. What happens, what changes them, why are they changed by the end. You start with the hero's journey. You start with an ordinary world. What were they like before whatever it is that's going to push them into action? What was their life like? What was their ordinary world like? Okay, so in that case, ordinary world, that is basically your setup. That is your orientation or your setup for the story. Then it goes into call to adventure. Okay, what now pushes them out of their comfort zone into this new world, into this new space where they no longer can have the ordinary life they wanted, or they need something that pushes them into whatever it is they want, whatever it is that wants them, makes them take action. There's a refusal of the call. So this is things like second thoughts. This is things like questioning whether or not you should go through with something. In the case of like Katniss Everdeen, this is basically sometimes, not Katniss Everdeen, Jonas from The Giver. Jonas in The Giver, he's been selected as the giver or the new receiver of memory. And he basically is like, nope, don't want to do it. He doesn't want to be different. He doesn't want to stand out, but that job makes him different. So there's that refusal. Then they meet the mentor, and whoever that mentor is, okay, what do they want? Who are they? This is the turning point in their story. This is when they really start to change. Then it goes into crossing the threshold. Okay, they're no longer in their ordinary life. They can no longer go back. There's no turning back. They're ready to act upon whatever it is that was driving them in the first place. Or at least they're ready enough to, or they're confident enough to actually try and start the process of getting what they want. Tests allies and enemies. Who are their allies? Who can they trust? Who can't they trust? They're introduced to them. They're out of their comfort zone, and they'll face challenges. This is in the middle part of the story. This is where the obstacles start to happen and build up. Then you go to approach. So this is when this is close to the end. Okay, this is like just before the climax. This is what is leading to the climax. They start to make the final preparations for what it is they want to achieve. Ordeal. So this is like a test. This is a physical thing or physical or emotional thing or a crisis they need to face before you get to the climax. They have to face this big challenge. Okay, they have to face this big challenge. They're questioning themselves. They have to face it. They have to come up with something. Reward. They've defeated the enemy. They've got what they want. What happens now? So this is when they start to transition out of the space they were in, where they were trying to get what they wanted, into the space where they've already got what they wanted, and they slowly wind down. Maybe they have a new want and need. Road back. This is when they start to come back to their ordinary world. They start to go back to a normal life. Resurrection. This is basically the consequences to their ordinary world or the lives of the people around them. And then return with elixir. They've returned. By the end of the story, they should be a different person. Now, nothing has to happen in that order. In fact, in my story, it doesn't happen in the exact order of the hero's journey, but they happen. My character goes through each stage, and I use the hero's journey to plot out her character arc. So this is more for the character arc, for the main character, and I found it really helpful. This was probably the most rigid I was with the planning, because this was about the character's journey. That's basically hero's journey. Reason I used it, I wanted to know what my character wanted, why they wanted it, and how they're going to get it. That's basically why I used it and why you can use it. There's quite a lot of references and resources about the hero's journey that you can pretty much Google, so I'm not going to include anything from here. Next thing I did was character description. So I actually planned out my characters, who they were, what they wanted, what motivated them, and I went full detailed with that. So I'll show you what I used. So because again, I was writing or planning this when I was actually teaching writing to younger students. So I used the resources there so I could use this as an example for them, and how it would work. So I basically used this character chart where you drew a picture of the character, you wrote their name, and then what you would do is you would identify things like the positive attributes. What are their good qualities? Are they calm? Are they curious? I literally listed their personality traits or their personal qualities that are positive. Negative attributes. What are things or personality traits or qualities they have that can be a bit of a problem? Too curious for their own good. Okay? Things like stubborn. They are stuck in their ways, whatever it is you want to describe. And a balanced character needs to have both positive and negative attributes. Then I identified the character's hopes and wishes. What is it they want or hope for? What's stopping them from getting what they want and hope for? How you would solve it. So this is you as an author. If you were in their shoes, what would you do to solve it? That would give you a starting point to how that character would react. You're putting yourself in their shoes, and you think about realistically, how would you react in that situation? What would you do? Then you go, an incident in the story that revealed an aspect of the character's feelings. There will be multiple incidents that reveal an aspect of the character's emotions. And I did a couple. I did actually 4. So something that, a situation that they got in that revealed something about them. Incident when the character was propelled to make a big choice. When did they make a choice? This is where the conflict was, internal conflict. What pushed them to make a choice? And what was that choice? How the character evolved by the end of the story. So by the end, how have they changed? So then you, in this particular worksheet, then you circle things. Are they a flat character, round, dynamic, static? So if they're static, they don't change. That's basically like typical archetype characters. I also used something called Tadam, particularly for my main character. Now, Tadam is basically a process for planning a character. I was only trying it out simply because I had to teach it. So Tadam is basically looking at how your character thinks in the context of the story. How do they think about certain things? What do they think? Their appearance. So what do they look like? This could also involve personality. Dialogue, how do they talk? Do they talk quickly? Like do they talk super fast that they sound like they're on a sugar high? Do they have a giggle or a cackle? One of my characters is inspired by Rumpelstiltskin in the way they talk. So how do they speak? You could put an example dialogue sentence. Do they have a verbal tic? Do they stutter? Actions. So what are the actions they undertake? How is it they change? So this is basically things they do to change from passive to active. Let's see if I can get it. So this is how they physically change or evolve. Let's see if I can get it up. Okay, let's see if I can show you. Okay, so actions is what do they do? Why do they do it? It can also be their physical movements. How do they move? Do they strut? Do they move slowly? How do their actions show their feelings? Do they show their feelings? Then it's mannerisms. So this is things like, again, how they speak or behave. Are they withdrawn? Are they super excited, or are they introverted or extroverted? Do they have hand gestures? Do they have a tic? Like, for example, dearie. You know how Rumpelstiltskin in Once Upon a Time goes, really dearie? Or dearie as a repeated thing. One of my characters goes, little fish. As it makes the little comment, little fish. So that's their tic. That's something they do. So characters speak in a certain way. They act in a certain way. And this Tadam is basically writing down how do they do it. Now, I only use this for Moriah. I didn't do that for any of the other characters, just her. Another strategy, what I also did was character web. Because once I started going into the different characters, I'm like, how are they connected? So I just did a character web. So I literally wrote the main character's name in the middle. How are they connected to the others? What are their relationships like? So the relationships, so are they married? Are they siblings? Are they the villain? Or how are they connected to each other? So this is basically what I did. Okay. Then the last thing that I did was actually designing my characters. Now, So once I've done all the descriptions and the planning and the outlining for everything, I look at my characters. What do they look like? And I also drew a map as well of the world, what the actual world looked like. So visually I knew what to describe. Again, this is what it looked like prior to falling into the ocean. So I knew roughly where certain things were, what certain things looked like. Okay, so I drew a map online using Inkarnate, which is a really good software and it's pretty much free, the basic version. So I drew a map and I also designed my characters. I actually designed using apps that were available. I designed how they would look. So I did like family portrait and I also did individual characters. So what do they look like? Now, sometimes these apps, they're not that great. So I couldn't actually go into the depth I wanted when it comes to appearances. But I'll show you one. So I used the character art, or art sites that allow you to create characters using basic templates. And I used that so I could visualize the characters, because I wanted to know what looked right before I started writing it. What actually looks right, what looks good, what doesn't. Okay, I'm sorry, this is a very long video, so I'm going to end it there. So that's basically what my process is for planning, or this is what my process was for Voiceless. I am simplifying that process for my next novel. In my next novel, the planning is a lot less, but I am still describing my characters. I'm still using a character chart for describing my characters. I am still doing a basic plot outline. I've still done a brain dump, but I'm not going into too much detail, like replotting it as a hero's journey, things like that. So, let's recap. I do analyze an original text or text in the same genre. I do a brain dump of all ideas connected to what I like. I do 3-arc story structure. I do character charts or tadam. I then do a hero's journey. I also do hero's journey, and I also design my characters. That's basically what I do. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So with the I also wanted to announce that my novel is now available for pre-order, or it will be available for pre-order soon. So I've put the links for a couple of the stores where it is now available to pre-order. Yeah, so it's now available pre-order, and I've also put the link for my Facebook page and my Goodreads page. So if you are interested, you can put my book in your want to read or TBR pile. Yeah.